All right, today we are cracking open one of the most influential and, let's be honest, most notorious guides to leadership ever written. Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. Forget all the inspirational quotes you've heard. This is a cold, hard, and timeless playbook on the reality of getting power and, more importantly, keeping it.
So let's just jump right in with the one question Machiavelli forces every leader to ask themselves. It cuts right to the absolute heart of his philosophy. And trust me, his answer is, well, it's not what you'd expect.
To really get his shocking advice, we have to understand why he wrote this thing in the first place. This wasn't some academic paper. Machiavelli was a politician who'd been kicked to the curb, and The Prince was basically a desperate job application to the ruling Medici family. But it was also more than that. It was a passionate plea for a strong leader to finally unite a broken, war-torn Italy.
Okay, so everything that follows, I mean all of it, the ruthless advice on cruelty, deception, and power, it's all built on one single foundational belief he had about what people are really like.
And here it is. This is the core idea that was so radical for its time. He basically said, look, countless leaders have failed because they were way too idealistic. They tried to govern people based on how they should be. Machiavelli's big move was to just throw that idealism right out the window and build a system of power based on the cold, hard reality of how people actually are.
So what is that reality? Well, according to Machiavelli, it's not a pretty picture. He saw people as fundamentally ungrateful and fickle. He believed we're all natural liars, driven by selfish greed. That we're cowardly, we run from danger, and, this is a big one for leaders, we are super easily fooled by how things look on the surface.
This quote is maybe the most chilling summary of his entire worldview. Just let that sink in for a second. He's saying people will get over the death of their own father faster than they'll get over losing their inheritance. What he's arguing is that our attachment to our stuff, to our money, is stronger than our most sacred family bonds. This deeply cynical view that self-interest trumps everything is the key that unlocks his entire strategy.
So, if you buy into this grim view of humanity, what does that mean if you're in charge? Well, it means you take the traditional rulebook of virtues, be kind, be generous, and you toss it right out. In its place, Machiavelli writes a new, pragmatic, and often ruthless set of instructions for survival.
This table just lays it out perfectly. Take being loved. Sounds great, right? But in his view, love is a bond that self-interested people will break whenever it's good for them. It's totally unreliable. His solution? Be feared. Fear is based on a dread of punishment, an emotion you control, and that, he says, never fails. Same logic applies to generosity. Being lavish might look good at first, but it drains your bank account, forces you to raise taxes, and eventually makes people hate you. The smarter path, he argues, is to be seen as miserly. You save money, you don't burden your people, and over time, that stability earns you their respect.
But here's a huge, crucial distinction he makes. While it's better to be feared than loved, a prince must never let that fear turn into hatred. Why? It's simple. Fear keeps people obedient. Hatred inspires them to rebel. Being hated is one of the absolute worst things that can happen to a leader. A smart ruler knows exactly where that line is, and they never, ever cross it.
So how does a leader walk this tightrope, balancing fear without getting hated? Machiavelli said they have to become two powerful animals at once.
You've got to be the lion, with the raw strength and courage to scare off your enemies, the wolves. But at the same time, you have to be the fox, with the cunning and intelligence to see the political traps that are being laid for you. One without the other is a complete recipe for disaster. And Machiavelli is brutally clear on this point. Strength alone is not going to cut it. As he puts it, relying only on brute force is just plain stupid. A leader needs both the brawn of the lion and the brains of the fox to survive and to win.
And this need for cunning, for that foxy intelligence, leads us straight to the most controversial part of his whole toolkit, the idea that for a leader what people think is true is way more powerful than what's actually true.
Machiavelli basically insists that a leader has to put on a show. To the public, you have to appear virtuous. You have to seem compassionate, trustworthy, a model of integrity, kind, and especially, you have to look religious. But, and this is the absolute core of what we call Machiavellian, while you're maintaining this virtuous performance, you must be mentally prepared and totally willing to do the exact opposite, to do evil if it's necessary to hold on to power.
So how do you get away with this? Well, according to Machiavelli, it works because people are fundamentally superficial. We judge by what we see. The masses will see your amazing public performance, but only a tiny handful of people will ever know the ruthless reality happening behind the curtain. A successful prince gets this and uses it to his advantage.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. You've got the cynical view of humanity, the new rules of power, the lion and the fox, the art of deception. When you put it all together, what does the ideal Machiavellian leader actually look like?
It really boils down to three key things. First, the prince is a pragmatic realist. They govern based on the cynical truth of how people are, not on some fantasy. Second, they're a master of duality, knowing exactly when to be the lion and when to be the fox. And finally, they're a master performer, someone who understands that controlling public perception isn't just part of the job, it is the job. And this leaves us with a big question that people have been debating for 500 years. Is this playbook just a cynical relic from a brutal past? Or did Machiavelli simply have the courage to write down the uncomfortable and maybe timeless truths about how power really works, both back then and maybe even right now?